The twin suns hung low above the horizon of the alien world, spreading a golden glow over the vast crystal plains that stretched far into the distance. The royal palace stood tall upon the highest ridge, its towers carved from luminous stone that shimmered like frozen starlight. Within those walls lived the princess, heir to a legacy that was older than memory itself. Yet within her heart there rested a secret that not even the brightest scholars of her court could explain. She often walked alone across the quiet gardens of the palace, her mind drifting back to fragments of a memory that seemed more like a dream than a real moment of her past. She remembered a time when she was very young, too young to even understand who she was or what it meant to be royal. In those hazy recollections, she saw herself lost in the deep forests of her home world, frightened and helpless until someone had come to her side. She remembered strong arms lifting her, a voice calm and warm speaking words she could not understand, and the sense of safety that filled her heart as if the universe itself had wrapped her in protection. Her tutors and advisors had told her the story many times, though in their version it was always one of the palace guardians who saved her, a nameless soldier who had fallen in service to the crown. They insisted there was nothing more to it, yet the princess never believed their tale fully. The figure in her memory did not look or move like her people. The eyes she saw in her dreams were not the glowing eyes of her kind, but something softer and unfamiliar. She kept these thoughts to herself as she grew older, but they did not fade. Instead, they deepened with time until the question of who truly saved her became an unshakable mystery carved into her soul. The princess was no ordinary child, nor an ordinary heir. Her curiosity was far greater than most of her kind, and unlike many nobles, she was not satisfied with comfortable lies. When she sat through long councils where elders spoke in endless circles about trade and power, her mind drifted back to that single childhood moment. At night she wandered to her chamber window, gazing at the stars that filled the endless sky, wondering if somewhere out there existed the truth that had been hidden from her. She longed to know more, not only for herself but because she felt the answer carried a weight greater than she could explain. Her world was peaceful on the surface, a realm of order and beauty, but beneath that harmony lay strict rules about what could be remembered and what must be forgotten. Her people prided themselves on purity, on being untouched by outsiders. They told stories of their ancestors who built empires with their own strength, never owing anything to foreign hands. For the princess to question who saved her was to question that entire belief. Yet in her heart she could not silence the feeling that her life had been changed by someone outside of her world. One evening, as the sun slipped below the horizon, painting the skies in shades of violet and gold, she sat in the library hall, surrounded by towering shelves of crystal tablets etched with histories of her people. The candles burned quietly around her, their light dancing against the polished floor. She searched through old records, not for laws or victories, but for stories forgotten. Somewhere, she believed, there must be a clue. Yet time after time, the records spoke only of her kind, their pride and their glory, never once mentioning a savior of another origin. It was as if the memory she carried had been carefully erased from all written history. Still, the image of that day would not leave her. She could almost hear again the rustle of the forest leaves, the sound of strange breathing near her, and the deep voice whispering comfort, though she never understood the language. What struck her most was the feeling in those words. Even though she had not known the meaning, her heart had understood the intent: kindness, bravery, and an unshaken promise of safety. That was not something she associated with the cold discipline of her guards. That was something entirely different. Her attendants noticed the way she often drifted away in thought, and some whispered quietly among themselves that the princess carried too much imagination for a royal. But they did not understand the weight of a mystery that haunted her every breath. She had grown into a young woman of grace and wisdom, admired by her people, yet she often felt a distance between herself and the world she was meant to rule. The truth she sought had become a silent wall, standing between her and the path her elders laid before her. One night, unable to rest, she wandered out into the palace gardens where tall crystal trees rose like glowing pillars under the twin moons. She walked barefoot across the grass, cool dew clinging to her steps, and looked up at the sky. In her heart she spoke to the unknown savior of her childhood. She asked silently who they were, why they came, and why she could never know their name. As the stars glittered above, she felt something stir deep inside her, a quiet determination that she would no longer remain blind. That was the night she resolved to search for the truth, no matter the cost. She would not rest until she discovered who had once lifted her from fear and carried her to safety. The elders could hide their records. Her advisors could caution her against chasing shadows, but her soul demanded answers. She felt the pull of destiny in her veins, as though the universe itself was guiding her toward the revelation. The princess turned her eyes once more to the stars. Somewhere out there, across the endless sea of night, lived the truth of her savior. She did not yet know that the being who had saved her life was not one of her kind, but something far more unexpected, something her people considered fragile and insignificant. She did not yet know that her savior had been human. The princess spent the next days moving quietly through the palace, her eyes scanning every corner, her mind searching for whispers of the past. She walked among the towering crystal shelves in the archives, touching the smooth surfaces of ancient records, letting her fingers linger over carved symbols that told stories of wars and victories, but never mentioned the moment that had shaped her entire childhood. Still, a faint hope pulled her forward, a sense that the truth was hiding somewhere, waiting for her to find it. She moved past the old maps that outlined the forests where she had almost been lost, remembering the soft sound of leaves brushing against her skin and the warmth of arms that had lifted her when the shadows pressed close. Outside the palace, the world seemed calm, bathed in the glow of the twin suns, yet she felt that beneath the quiet surface there were secrets waiting to be discovered. She began to explore places the court had long forbidden, walking through forgotten corridors and abandoned wings of the palace where dust settled over relics untouched for centuries. Her footsteps echoed softly against the crystal floors, and she felt as though she were following a trail invisible to everyone else. One evening she found a broken device hidden in a corner, half buried beneath the rubble of a collapsed wall. Its metal was strange and unlike anything she had ever seen. The soft hum of its energy still lingered in the air. She held it in her hands, turning it over and tracing its unfamiliar symbols, and felt a connection stronger than anything she had known before. It was as if this device was speaking directly to her memory. The next day, she walked along the crystal cliffs near the palace, letting the wind blow through her hair and thinking of the shadowy figure she had once called her savior. There were fragments of fabric tangled among the rocks, faded and brittle with age, not from her people's clothing. She picked them up and felt their texture, the roughness and the faint smell of something foreign, something not from her world. The air seemed to whisper to her as she carried the fragments back to her chamber. Each piece was a small clue, a signal from the past that her memory had not deceived her. She realized that someone from beyond her world had touched her life in a way no alien ever could. Late at night, she spread the fragments across the floor of her room, examining each carefully under the soft light of her lamps. The colors and fibers told a story she could not yet fully read, but it was clear that these were not of her kind. She felt a thrill in her chest and a fear at the same time. What if the truth was something she could not fully understand? What if the person who saved her was someone her people would never accept? Yet she could not turn away. Her heart insisted on knowing the whole story, no matter how dangerous the path might be. Her attendants watched her from a distance, whispering among themselves. They could sense the change in her, the determination that burned like a quiet flame behind her calm exterior. Some feared that she was chasing shadows, risking her reputation and the stability of the palace. Others admired her courage, though they did not say it aloud. The princess did not care for their opinions. She felt that the answers she sought were more important than politics or tradition. Every fragment, every hint, every memory pulled her closer to a truth that she could no longer ignore. One morning she found a small, hidden corridor behind a shelf of crystal tablets. It led down into a chamber she had never seen, a place filled with relics from the past. The room smelled of dust and metal, and the air was heavy with the weight of forgotten years. Among the items she discovered a shattered helmet and a chest containing strange tools, none of which resembled anything used by her people. She knelt and examined them, her mind racing as she imagined a figure who might have worn them. The memory of the child in the forest came alive again, the fear and then the warmth, the sense that someone had risked everything to save her. She could almost see the figure's face, still blurry in her mind, but the certainty of their bravery and kindness was as clear as the stars above. The princess knew she could not tell anyone about what she had found. Her council would never approve, and her people might not understand. She made a decision to continue her search alone, moving at night through hidden paths and forgotten trails. The cliffs, the forests, the abandoned outposts all became part of her secret journey. She began to leave small notes for herself, writing observations and drawing the symbols from the fragments she found. She hoped that someday these clues would connect, forming a picture she could understand. Days passed into weeks, and the princess felt a strange joy mixed with anticipation. Every clue she uncovered seemed to speak of someone remarkable, someone who had crossed the vastness of space or the unknown borders of her world to save a young child. She thought of the human stories she had heard from distant travelers, tales of courage and resilience from a species often underestimated by others. Could it be possible that a human had saved her? The thought both thrilled and terrified her. Yet she could not deny the growing certainty in her heart. One evening she climbed the cliffs and looked out at the distant horizon where the skies met the crystal plains. The suns were setting, painting the clouds in fire and gold. She held the fragments and devices close to her chest, feeling the connection to the past pulse beneath her fingers. Somewhere out there, she knew, the truth was waiting. She could almost hear a whisper carried on the wind, a gentle voice reminding her of safety and warmth, urging her to follow the path of discovery. The princess closed her eyes and made a promise to herself that she would find the person who had saved her life, no matter how long it took or how far she had to go. The journey had only just begun, yet already she felt the weight of destiny pressing upon her. The unknown savior had left marks in her world, traces that spoke of courage beyond her kind. She knew that when the pieces finally came together, the truth would be more powerful than she could imagine. It was not merely a story of rescue or childhood, it was a story that would change the way she saw herself, her people, and the universe. As night fell, she returned to the palace, carrying her precious discoveries. She placed them carefully in a hidden chamber she had chosen for herself, a place where no one could find them. There she sat, surrounded by the fragments, the shards of memory, and the silent echoes of the past. She whispered to the shadows, thanking the unknown being who had once risked everything for a small child. She did not know their name, their origin, or even if she would ever meet them. Yet she felt a bond stronger than anything her royal title could grant. In that moment she understood that her journey had changed forever, and the mysteries she pursued were no longer just her own. They were the key to understanding the courage and heart of someone extraordinary, someone who might not even belong to her world. The princess felt the weight of her discoveries pressing on her mind like a quiet storm. Each fragment she had found, each artifact from the past, seemed to hum with secrets she could almost hear but could not yet understand. She returned to the hidden chamber night after night, arranging the pieces carefully, touching the cold metal of the devices and tracing the faded fibers of fabric, as if they could speak the truth into her hands. Her memory of the forest and the warm presence that had saved her as a child grew sharper with every day she spent in this pursuit. It was no longer a shadowy memory, but a vivid echo, calling her toward answers she had longed for in silence. One evening, she discovered a hidden alcove beneath the palace archives, concealed behind a row of tall crystal shelves that no one had moved in generations. The air was thick with dust, and the faint light of her lamps danced across the forgotten walls, revealing scrolls and tablets she had never seen before. Some were records of trade and diplomacy, others chronicles of battles, yet one tablet caught her attention unlike any other. It was smaller than the rest, engraved with symbols that seemed familiar, symbols she had seen on the strange devices she had found. She carefully opened it and read the inscriptions, her eyes widening as the truth began to emerge. The tablet told the story of a ship that had fallen from the sky many years ago, far beyond the borders of her kingdom. It spoke of a lone traveler who had landed amidst the dense forests of her world, a being unlike any native inhabitant. The traveler had seen a young child in danger, alone and trembling, and had acted without hesitation. The records described the courage it took to cross the wild terrain and protect a life not one's own. The princess felt her chest tighten as she read, the words aligning perfectly with the memory she had carried all her life. Every detail, the rustling of leaves, the calm voice, the strong arms lifting her from fear, was written there as if confirming the truth she had always sensed. She could hardly believe it. The traveler was not one of her people at all, but a human, a being her kingdom had long considered weak and unpredictable. Her heart raced as she realized that the stories her elders had told her were only half-truths, carefully shaped to hide a secret they feared would challenge their pride. She touched the tablet reverently, imagining the traveler who had saved her, picturing his face, still a blur in her mind, yet filled with bravery and kindness. The realization that her life had been spared by someone from another world filled her with awe and gratitude. The princess could no longer hold back her need to understand everything. She combed through more hidden records, finding scattered mentions of humans visiting her planet long ago, often in secrecy. Some were explorers, others were traders, but the traveler who had saved her stood out as the bravest of them all, risking death to protect a life so fragile. She read through each word with care, piecing together the path the human had taken, imagining his journey across forests, rivers, and cliffs to reach her. It was as if history itself had been waiting for her to see the truth, waiting for her to acknowledge the courage of one so different from her people. A strange mixture of emotions filled her, anger that her people had hidden the truth, awe at the bravery she had never before imagined, and a deep, unshakable gratitude. She realized that the world she had known, the stories she had grown up believing, were only part of the truth. The human's courage was real, and it had shaped her life in ways the palace could never explain. She felt a growing determination to honor that courage, to make sure it would not be forgotten, even if others tried to deny it. The princess began to ask herself questions she had never dared before. Why had the elders hidden this truth? What did it mean for her people if a human had once saved their royal child? Could they accept that courage and kindness were not limited to their own kind? She could feel the weight of history pressing on her. Yet she also felt the exhilaration of discovering a story larger than herself, a story that could change the way she saw the world. She spent nights examining every artifact, cross-referencing them with the hidden tablets, tracing the faint traces of human tools and clothing that had been left behind. Every discovery deepened her understanding, and every understanding strengthened her resolve. She began to imagine meeting the human, though she did not even know if he still lived, though she did not even know his name. The bond she felt toward him was invisible but unbreakable, woven into her memory and her heart. She knew that one day she would have to confront her people with this truth, that someday she would have to honor the human who had given her the gift of life. The more she uncovered, the more vivid the memories became, and the more determined she grew. She could almost hear the human's voice in the quiet of her chamber, soft yet strong, guiding her, comforting her as he had long ago. She closed her eyes and remembered the warmth, the sense of safety that had filled her heart when she had been just a child. She realized that this bond, though silent for decades, had never faded. It had been waiting for her to understand, waiting for her to recognize the bravery and kindness of someone who had crossed worlds to save her. One morning, she called her most trusted advisor, a gentle scholar who had always encouraged her curiosity. She spoke carefully, her words measured yet firm, hinting at the discoveries she had made without revealing everything. The scholar's eyes widened as she described the hidden records and the human artifacts, realizing at once the magnitude of what the princess had uncovered. Together, they began to study the records more closely, mapping the journey of the human traveler and piecing together the story that had been lost to time. The princess felt a sense of exhilaration she had never known, as if the past and present were converging to show her a new path. She realized that the human who had saved her was not just a figure of memory, but a symbol of courage, of kindness, and of the unexpected strength that lay outside the boundaries of her world. Her heart swelled with gratitude, and she made a quiet promise that she would honor him in ways that would be remembered for generations. As night fell over the palace, she stood once more beneath the twin moons, gazing at the stars that filled the endless sky. She felt a quiet connection across the vastness of space, a thread that bound her to the human who had saved her all those years ago. The truth was now clear, and with it came a sense of purpose stronger than anything she had felt before. She understood that her journey was only beginning, that the hidden truth she had uncovered was a key to something larger than herself, and that honoring this courage would require strength, wisdom, and a heart unafraid to challenge the conventions of her world. The princess felt a storm inside her, a mix of determination and fear that she could no longer contain. The truth she had uncovered about her savior was too important to hide any longer. She knew that revealing it would shake the very foundations of her kingdom, challenging centuries of pride and tradition. Yet the warmth of memory and the courage of the human who had saved her guided her steps as she walked through the palace halls, her heart beating with the rhythm of a destiny she could no longer ignore. Her advisors were waiting, as she had expected, their faces filled with polite concern and subtle fear. They had always been careful to guide her, to shield her from knowledge that might disrupt the harmony of the palace. But she had grown, and her spirit could no longer be contained by their rules or caution. She spoke to them with a calm voice, yet her words carried the strength of someone who had seen a truth too powerful to deny. She told them about the hidden tablets, the artifacts from the past, the fragments that pointed to a savior unlike any her people had ever known. The council murmured among themselves, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others clenching their hands at the audacity of what she claimed. They spoke of traditions and history, of the pride of their kind and the dangers of revealing weakness. They warned her that humans were unpredictable, that admitting one had saved the princess might undermine their authority and change the perception of her reign. Yet she listened, knowing that no warning could silence the voice of truth in her heart. She had seen the evidence, she had touched it, and she could feel the courage of the human still echoing in her soul. The princess pressed on, refusing to yield to their fear or skepticism. She spoke of the bravery that had crossed worlds, of the kindness that had risked life for a child she barely remembered. Her words carried not just memory, but conviction. The certainty of someone who had lived through so profound it could not be denied. The council fell silent, their eyes tracing the resolve in her expression, realizing that she would not rest until this story was honored. Some elders spoke again, trying to convince her that it was better to forget, to let history remain unchallenged. They said that her people had survived for generations by valuing their strength above all, that admitting a human had saved the princess could weaken their legacy. But she shook her head, feeling the pulse of truth in every word she had read, every fragment she had held. She reminded them that courage and kindness were the qualities that had saved her, that the story of her life was not diminished by the origin of her savior, but made greater. The room was tense with the weight of her words, and yet the princess felt an unexpected calm. She knew that what she sought was not just recognition, but understanding, a way to honor the human who had shaped her life. She imagined him, standing in the forest long ago, risking everything to save a child not his own, and her heart swelled with gratitude. She spoke of this gratitude aloud, telling the council that the human's actions had left a mark not only on her life, but on the very soul of her kingdom. If they were brave enough to see it. As she spoke, she noticed subtle changes among her advisors. Some lowered their heads, whispering among themselves, while others looked at her with new respect. She realized that the story she carried had the power to challenge prejudice, to inspire courage, and to remind her people that greatness could come from unexpected places. The human who had saved her was no longer a figure of mystery, but a symbol of what her world could aspire to: bravery, kindness, and the willingness to act for the good of another. The princess decided that the next step was to honor the truth publicly. She called for a gathering in the central hall of the palace, where all citizens could witness the story she had uncovered. The hall filled with her people, curious and uncertain. As the princess stood before them, the fragments of the past displayed carefully at her side. She spoke of the events long ago, of the child lost in the forest, and of the unknown figure who had risked everything to save her. She revealed the artifacts, the tablets, and the clues she had discovered, letting the evidence speak for itself. Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd as the truth became clear. Many had never imagined that a human, a being from a distant world, could have saved the princess. Yet the proof was undeniable. The story challenged everything they had been taught, yet it also stirred a sense of awe and admiration. The courage of the human became a mirror for their own potential, a reminder that heroism could be found in those they had long underestimated. Some still resisted, clinging to fear and tradition, but the princess did not waver. She spoke with clarity and compassion, urging her people to see beyond prejudice and to honor the bravery that had once saved their royal child. She reminded them that true strength was not measured by lineage or power alone, but by the courage to act, the kindness to protect, and the willingness to risk oneself for the sake of another. Her words resonated deeply, echoing through the crystal walls and filling the hearts of those who listened with new understanding. By the end of the day, the princess had accomplished what she had set out to do. The hidden truth had been revealed, the courage of the human honored, and the walls of fear and prejudice began to crumble. People spoke quietly among themselves, inspired by the revelation and grateful for the example of bravery that had transcended worlds. The princess stood beneath the stars that night, looking out at the horizon, feeling a sense of peace that she had never known. She knew that the human who had saved her had changed not only her life, but the very soul of her kingdom, and she felt the weight of that legacy settle warmly in her heart. She returned to her hidden chamber, placing the fragments and records in a place of honor. The story of the human who had saved her would not be forgotten. It would live on in memory, in history, and in the hearts of her people. She whispered her thanks to the unseen hero, imagining the courage that had crossed worlds to protect her. The princess realized that the journey was far from over, that the impact of this truth would continue to unfold, yet she felt ready for what was to come. She had confronted fear, challenged tradition, and honored the bravery of another, and in doing so she had grown into the ruler she was meant to be. As the moons rose high in the sky, she felt a quiet connection to the human who had saved her, a bond that could never be broken by time or distance. She knew that the story of her life, of her childhood savior, and of the courage that had shaped her destiny, would inspire generations to come. The princess smiled softly, feeling the warmth of gratitude and the power of truth, ready to face whatever the future held with courage, wisdom, and a heart open to the unexpected wonders of the universe. The morning sun bathed the palace in soft, golden light, and the princess walked through the gardens with a quiet determination. The events of the past days had changed everything, and yet she felt a calm certainty settle in her heart. Her people had seen the truth, some hesitant, some amazed, and others inspired, but all had witnessed the courage of the human who had saved her as a child. That story was no longer a hidden fragment of the past. It was alive, breathing through her words, her actions, and the hearts of those who had finally understood the power of bravery beyond boundaries. She passed through the crystal paths, the dew sparkling beneath her feet, thinking of the journey she had undertaken to uncover the truth. She remembered the fragments, the old devices, and the hidden tablets, each one a step closer to understanding the life-changing act of courage that had defined her own. She felt the warmth of that memory and the presence of the human who had saved her, though she had never met him in years. The bond was invisible, yet it was as real as the sunlight on her face or the soft hum of the palace halls. The princess knew that honoring this human required more than just revealing the past. She called for the construction of a monument in the central square, a place where all could see and remember the bravery that had once crossed worlds. Artisans from across the kingdom worked tirelessly, shaping crystal and metal into a form that represented courage, selflessness, and the unseen strength of one who risked everything for another. The princess oversaw every detail, guiding their hands with reverence and care, ensuring that the story would live forever in the hearts of her people. When the monument was complete, she invited her citizens to gather, sharing the story of her childhood savior with a clarity and emotion that moved even the most skeptical among them. She spoke of the child lost in the forest, of fear pressing close, and of a hand that reached across the unknown to offer protection. She described the artifacts she had found, the hidden tablets that told the human story, and the courage that had inspired her entire journey. The crowd listened in silence, and when she finished, the air was filled with awe and a quiet reverence for a hero who had never sought recognition. The elders, who had once tried to hide the truth, approached the princess with humility. They admitted that their fear had blinded them, that their pride had prevented them from seeing the value of courage beyond their own kind. They thanked her for having the strength to reveal the truth, and for teaching them that greatness could come from unexpected places. In that moment, the princess realized that her mission was complete, not only because she had honored the human who saved her, but because she had changed the hearts of her people. The legacy of courage had become a bridge between worlds and a lesson for generations to come. Evening fell over the kingdom, painting the skies with shades of violet and gold. The princess walked alone to the monument, feeling the smooth crystal beneath her fingertips and the cool metal shaped into the form of the human hero. She whispered her thanks, imagining his presence, feeling the warmth of gratitude and connection that had never faded. The human may have been far away, or perhaps long gone, but the impact of his actions lived on through her, through the story, and through the changed hearts of her people. As the moons rose high, casting silver light over the palace and the crystal plains, the princess stood in quiet reflection. She remembered the fear she had felt as a child, the comfort of the unknown arms that had lifted her from danger, and the bravery that had transcended worlds. That human had shown her the strength of compassion and the power of action, proving that even the smallest life could inspire change across the universe. She felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that the story would endure, that the courage of one human had shaped not only her life, but the future of an entire kingdom. In the weeks that followed, the kingdom began to embrace the story of the human who had saved the princess. Artists painted murals, storytellers spoke of courage across worlds, and children learned that heroism was not defined by origin, but by the willingness to act for others. The princess continued her life, ruling with wisdom, compassion, and a renewed sense of purpose, yet she always carried the memory of her savior in her heart. It guided her decisions, inspired her leadership, and reminded her that even in the vastness of space, kindness and bravery could bridge worlds. One night, standing on the highest tower of the palace, she gazed at the stars that stretched endlessly into the universe. She imagined a human, wherever he might be, and felt the bond between them, invisible yet unbreakable. She whispered her gratitude to him, knowing that his courage had given her life, shaped her destiny, and changed the very soul of her kingdom. The stars seemed to shimmer in response, a quiet acknowledgement of the courage that had traveled across worlds to touch a single life. The princess had learned that true power was not in titles, wealth, or armies. It was in the willingness to protect, to act, and to care for another without thought of reward. She had learned that courage could come from the most unexpected places, and that a single act of bravery could echo across time and space. The human who had saved her had shown her the true meaning of heroism, and in honoring him, she had found her own strength. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, the princess felt the full weight of her journey settle in her heart. She had uncovered the truth, faced fear and tradition, and honored the hero who had shaped her life. Her kingdom had changed with her, embracing a new understanding of courage and compassion. The story of her childhood savior would live forever, a reminder that even the smallest act of bravery could have consequences far greater than anyone could imagine. With a soft smile, she turned from the stars to the palace, ready to continue her life as princess and ruler, carrying with her the legacy of a human who had given her life, the courage to act, and the lesson that true greatness lies in the heart. She knew that this story would inspire countless generations, teaching them that heroism is universal, and that the bonds of kindness and bravery can cross worlds, touch lives, and leave a mark that endures beyond time. The memory of her savior was no longer a shadow in her mind, but a living truth that shaped everything she was and everything she would become. The princess felt gratitude and peace like she had never known, knowing that she had honored the courage of a human who had once saved a frightened child in a forest far away, and that through her, his story would shine across the stars forever. The end.